My name is Nick. I was a software engineer. I worked with some people in this room that I saw a bit earlier. And now I run a website called All About Berlin. I started this website in 2017, and it's been my full-time job since 2020. The website's a collection of detailed guides that help immigrants navigate German bureaucracy and understand all the little systems that make up German society. In other words, it kind of shows how people can adult in a new country. The website is quite famous among immigrants. It's often praised for being very clear, straightforward, and practical. Bragging. I absolutely love that part of the job. I love how kind and grateful my readers have been. And every once in a while, I'll just meet a person and like through conversations, they learn that I run this website and they're like, oh my God, you're producing this website. And it just, warms my heart. It's truly one of the best parts of the job because it makes my work very rewarding. I can see the impact it has and I can see how it helps people navigate this brand new country they just moved in. However, the website is relatively unknown to native Germans, mostly because all of the content is in English. This was not a big problem for me 7 years ago because I mostly covered things that pertained especially to immigrants. But more and more, I work on things that also concern Germans. I cover things in ways that German-speaking resources don't. Germans also need to register their address to complete the Anmeldung, and I answered the questions in ways that the Berlin government just does not. So I feel like they could also benefit from this website if it just showed up in their search results. The guiding principle behind the website is that uncertainty causes anxiety. If you reduce uncertainty, you can manage also people's anxiety. What bothers us about waiting for a train, a taxi, or residence permit is not the wait itself, but the degree of uncertainty. When you start telling people how long things are going to take, they feel a lot better. A late train sucks, but as long as you know when it's coming, you can plan around it. If you don't know what is coming, what is going on, when your train is coming, it gets a lot trickier, it gets a lot scarier because you cannot make plans around it. You cannot know what the best decision is at that point. And likewise, if you tell people how long a bureaucratic process takes, they will feel a lot better. They wait the same amount of time, but the experience of waiting is improved by the clarity. Uncertainty obviously also has a cost. You leave home earlier because you don't know how long it will take to find parking. You get an early bus because you don't know how reliable the BVG is going to be that day. And you get to the airport early because you don't know how long the security check is going to take. And this means that you waste time and energy to account for the unexpected. Likewise, we tell people to bring everything they have to their immigration office appointment because a missing document can delay their applications by weeks and actually months. And it means that people burn through a lot more of their fancy nodding. Yeah. I see that people burn through their savings. Some of them even lose the job offer before they even start because they're waiting for a decision from the immigration office. It can even cost them their life in Germany in the sense that they have to go back to their country. And these are not stories that we just make up. These are things that I see. Someone was subletting my apartment and he had to leave basically a week into renting simply because he ran out of money. He just ran out of money and he didn't know when he would get his residence permit. So yeah, people scramble to find unnecessary documents and they get unnecessary translations at great expense because the instructions are not. So this uncertainty wastes everyone's time and energy. People again spend a lot of time getting documents that they don't need and they spend a lot of energy stressing about the outcome. And the caseworkers also waste time processing these incomplete applications and turning people back because they followed instructions that were simply incomplete. So if you give people good instructions, they come prepared. They avoid a lot of unnecessary work. It comes from this principle that was drilled into us in engineering school that the earlier you catch a mistake, the cheaper it is to fix. In the worst case scenario, certainty causes avoidance. When I travel, I often struggle with foreign public transit. You try to board a bus in a new country and you're like, do I need a pass? Do I need a nap? Like, how do I pay for this thing? How much is it going to cost? Do I have to tap my card when I get in, or do I have to buy a ticket somehow? And it's different in every country. And you have to figure out, like, do you enter in the front, on the side? In which direction, which bus are you supposed to take? Does it run on that day? And then you're on the bus, and even as it's going, you're like, should I tell the driver to stop, or is it just going to happen on its own? So this stresses me out, and most of the time it's just too much trouble, and I end up walking a lot. Like, I get my step count when I travel. And speaking of foreign systems, this is a menu from a restaurant in Taiwan. When I was there, I really, really struggled to order food. Because you have to find one of these paper slips. It's not like a menu that someone brings to you. The paper slip is somewhere in the restaurant. Sometimes it's a little box by a kiosk in the entrance. Sometimes they bring it to you. So you have to find it. It looks usually like that, but they have all sorts of different formats. And on it, you have to understand what these squiggles mean. And each of these are items, food items. So you have to kind of Google what they are. And once you get what it is, you need to understand, like, do I want this? Do I want to eat this? And how big is the portion? And you just kind of look at the price. And for people who live in Taiwan, this is completely normal and natural and fine, and it makes a lot of sense. It's a very efficient and clever system. But then you have to figure out who you give it to and so on. So I went to Taiwan at the end of a very long trip. I was completely worn out by that time. I had no energy to deal with this. So I did what every traveler does in that situation. Went too fast. It was exactly like what I expected. It was predictable. It was mediocre, but it was a predictable kind of mediocre. There was the same kiosk. You have the same ones in Berlin, the same language. You pay the same way with your card, and you know it works. And you know your number is going to come up on the screen, and you just pick up the bag. And the only thing you can do wrong is just pick the wrong bag. So that's what you need sometimes. And that's kind of how it works for immigrants too. This sort of avoidance also happens with bureaucracy. People develop what I call envelope anxiety. When they get this envelope from the Finanzamt usually, or from any office that sends them this letter, and they don't understand taxes, they don't understand the system and what they're supposed to do and what they did wrong, and sometimes they don't speak German, and they don't have a tax advisor to deal with all of this. So they're afraid of what's in the envelope, and so they just ignore it. They just leave it on the kitchen table and just pretend that it's not there. And of course, things get worse. You cannot just ignore the Finanzamt. And there's someone, as this room, Martin, is the first person, I think, who's read my letters when I was new in this country 10 years ago and didn't speak a word of German. I was like, what is this? And so this does affect immigrants more than anyone else because they face everything at once on top of their other obligations. So on top of being just new in a country, being adults and whatnot, they have to do all of these things, whereas someone who's born in this country is gradually exposed to it. So they get it over 20 years and they see other people go through it. They have a support network to help. But an immigrant who comes in this country needs to find a job, an apartment, open a bank account, get health insurance, a SIM card, an internet contract, an electricity contract, maybe find a kita for their children, and a million other things all at once. And they also need to figure out the little things, like the system I just showed, right? They need to figure out how recycling works in Germany. And I've been here almost 10 years. I'm still a bit iffy on these things. Tipping, taxes, Sunday shopping, public transit, sick days, and all the other things. All of that time, they still have to go to work, take care of their children, do their grocery shopping, do the chores like the rest of us. It can be a lot. This is the nightmare graph. I use this a lot. To make things worse, there are lots of catch-22 situations, circular dependencies that most immigrants find themselves in. You need a residence permit to get a job, and you need a job to get an apartment, and you need an apartment to get a residence permit, and so it's just this loop you have to break up. And same thing. You need to pay the caution to get an apartment, and you need an apartment to get to open a bank account, and you need a bank account to pay the caution. So these things happen because those systems were not designed with immigrants in mind. Their designers made a lot of assumptions about what every adult German should have, and these assumptions were wrong. A big part of my job is to find and document workarounds for the deadlocks that result from such assumptions. So, what do you do if you can't open a bank account because you can't get a tax ID, because you can't register your address, because you can't find an apartment, because the housing market is fucked, and your Airbnb won't let you register? There's a guide for it. My solution is good information. If you cannot change the outcome, at least you can make the experience a bit more predictable. Good information makes the experience more predictable, and that makes people feel a lot better about the whole thing. Doesn't affect the wait times of anything, but at least they know what to argue. The best thing about information is that it's really cheap. A single person can build a website that serves hundreds of thousands of visitors every month and host it for free. My hosting bill after 7 years is still 10 euros a month. It could be 0, but my time is also worth something. Second, information scales really well. Whether you serve 100 people or 1 million people, the amount of effort is roughly the same. You get emails, you get more questions, which you can ignore. But you can really set just how much effort you put into the information, and more users don't really make a difference. For example, I've built this tool. It's a Anmeldung form filler. So it helps people fill the Anmeldung form in English. It asks simple questions. It helps you figure out every little field. And about 45 people use it every day. Like 45 people get to the point where they download the final form. So that's 16,000 people a year, I believe. This is thousands of hours saved, and it requires 0 extra effort. It's been live, and I barely ever touch it. When you think about it, good information is disproportionately effective. It's cheap, scales well, and seemingly no one cares about it. Why is that? I feel like there's overlap between our slides here. I suspect, first of all, that people only look for solutions in proportion to their budget, right? You have a big budget, you look for big solutions. But when you're focused on those big solutions, you tend to neglect the small details. You forget to sweat the small stuff. And this is the small stuff that makes all the difference, right? People, if you could spend billions building an airport, for example, and completely forget, this is a long list, but I'm just going to name a few. But you can forget about the bad signage. You can forget about the lack of water fountains, and most bafflingly, the lack of power outlets. And yeah, second thing, it's not glamorous. I'm proposing to do something that is boring and obvious, but to do it really well. You can sell a chatbot or some other AI nonsense because it's exciting, the press loves it, and it kind of makes you look like some champion of innovation. It doesn't even need to work. It just needs to have some of those keywords. But nobody reports on boring solution. It doesn't get people promoted. There are no startup or innovation awards for putting text on the internet, because we've been doing this for 25 years. But the small boring stuff, at least to me, feels extremely important. When you sweat the small stuff, it really shows that you care and that you're listening, and people feel that. They notice. And I can see it in the feedback. Yeah. So, how do you create good information? Step 1 is to get inspired. At least in my case, most of my guys are based on personal experience. I've been there. I've done that. I know how it feels. I know what it's like, and I know exactly at which steps of the process I got angry or confused or discouraged or just threw my hands in the air thinking like, why? So I can help other people navigate through it. I know exactly which points to stress and which parts of the process where I can be like, it's fine. You're going to be okay. It's going to take a few months, but don't stress too I also do it out of a duty to documents. I think that information is really cheap, and again, it's disproportionately effective, and it's extremely valuable to a lot of people, and it takes just a few minutes. And again, thousands of people benefit from just that one Reddit post that just keeps surfacing in the search results. So it would be really rude not to do that, not to share that information. But otherwise, when it comes to maintaining that website, there's no grand plan. I mostly follow impulses and work on whatever feels useful or interesting at the moment. Sometimes I know exactly what I have to work on, and my work is all cut out for me. And sometimes I just kind of go on the website, just buttering, fixing details and rephrasing things and adding a bit of more information. Sometimes I just wake up, have a super strong coffee, and see where it takes me. What I don't do is current events. This is it's a bit older, 2021, but I don't do current events. I don't do the news because these things keep changing a lot faster than I can keep track of. I don't have the manpower to do these sorts of things. I've made the mistake once, and I started this page thinking, in and out adventure, 2 weeks, it's gonna be over. Yeah. So I had to maintain that stupid page for 3 years because no one else would do it. It was the only source of information you could at a glance see, okay, what is going on? Like, what did they just add? What did they just vote? If you speak German and you have German news source as part of your news diet, you could kind of see those things coming from RBB24, for example. But a lot of people were left out, and even for English speakers, you never really got like just this. But yeah, I'm never doing anything like that again. I've done it last country. I've done it once again. I've also done it when Russia invaded Ukraine some time ago. Just to kind of curl all the people who wanted to help. So I could not do so much for Ukrainians on this page that was not already on the website, but I could at least tell people like, okay, calm down, try to like follow these resources, these people who are working really, really hard to provide help to Ukrainians, instead of like everyone just getting in their vans and going there at the same time. Step 2 is to fully understand the problem and come up with a basic guide structure. Most of my guides follow the same basic structure. What, why, who, how, and what comes next, and where to get help. When I say why, I mean why it's important to the reader. Because bureaucracies tend to do these things where they just go from their perspective. Like, they tell you what they want from you and nothing more. Like, just make an appointment, bring these documents and 50 euros, and then go home. That's all they tell you. And they don't tell you why, just do it because you have to. When I write, I try to justify things from the reader's perspective. Why should they care? What did they even get in return? And how does it fit within their goals? And also, what happens if they don't do it? Because people will just get lazy, scared, and just not do things that they are told to do. Then I try to explain how the process goes, again, from the user's perspective. What are their needs? What are they uncertain about? What scares them? Which of their cultural expectations are not going to apply in Germany? This, again, is based on my own experience most of the time, and also from talking to other immigrants who are going through these things. Usually, people want to know how long things are going to take, how hard it's going to be, how to prepare, and exactly how to obtain the documents that they require. Because the Finanzamt, Ausländerbehörde, they tend to give you a list of documents, and they say, bring it if it applies. You're supposed to figure out how to do that. And especially for the Anmeldung, they ask for birth certificates if it applies. And there's no clarification. I spent like a couple of weeks trying to clarify by writing to them and asking other people. And it turns out it's only for children. Things like these, because people try to get these documents. And sometimes it's a lot of effort and should not be left as an exercise to the reader. When I read instructions, I try to consider the person's entire journey, because people don't do, for example, their Anmeldung as just one thing. It's part of the greater things that they're doing. And I try to not leave it at just a step they're currently at. And that's why every guide ends with a section called What to Do Next. which is usually a good chance for me to catch people before they make mistakes in future or before they forget to do something. In many cases, for example, this is good. If you apply for a residence permit, all of these expenses are tax deductible. All of your relocation expenses in general are tax deductible, and people don't know this, and they skip a very good tax deduction that could be valuable to them. At last, I offer people ways to get help. I would love to help everyone individually, and I do answer every email that comes my way, but it's just not sustainable. As the website grows, I get more and more emails, and I try to just route people towards organizations that are purpose-built to help them, because these exist, but they tend to be very difficult to find. It's like a little A file that has a little website somewhere, and they are doing amazing work, but no one really finds them unless they really look for them. So yeah, I used to get dozens of emails a week. Now I just send them to the right people. Benefits everybody. Step 3 is research. Once I know what I want to write about, and I know the questions that I need to answer, burning questions that my readers have, I start researching the topic. And this is the hardest part of my job. Usually it involves a lot of reading. This is the Öffentliches section about the Blaue Karte, I think. So I start at a very high level, usually with newspaper articles, and then I work my way down gradually until I reach, for housing, usually the Berliner Mieterverein is the best sub, and then I work my way down to legal texts and court cases, because this is the ground truths. Then once I know how the system should work, I focus on how the system actually works. So I go on social media. There are some favorite Facebook groups, some subreddits. I go even on Twitter, and I read hundreds of social media posts about people's experiences. Not just the ones that went through the process, but also the people that are asking questions and never got an answer, because this shows what kinds of anxieties I need to tackle. I reach to some of them to ask questions, and usually they're all extremely happy to help. Now I have growing social media presence, so I can just poll the audience, which is super valuable again. And recently I'm trying something where I just created a WhatsApp group for a specific purpose. The last one was the permanent residence, and I just put people in them who just went through it. Again, asking people on social media. And this allows me to rapid fire questions instead of like sending emails and waiting. I can just like drop them a few casual questions, and it allows me to ask like much more detailed vibes-based questions instead of having an email that requires another long answer. I also asked the city directly, the city of Berlin, not the Ausländerbehörden, they're just unreachable. But I do write to the Bürgeramt. I have like this email shortcut that writes one email to each of the 12 Bezirke. And usually, so I send one of those and I wait 2-3 weeks. I get usually about 6 responses, 3 of which contradict each other. The way it goes, and the names are made up here, but Stiglitz does it one way, Pankow does it another. Very misses the point, and no, this is true. Very misses the point. Like after I ask a question about something in vetting, and they just give me an Anmeldung appointment, and tada. And yeah, so Mitte, usually this is also true actually. Mitte replies 2 months later. Like I ask questions and they're like yes, and it's like the guy's out. Like it's pointless. Yeah. But that's just within Berlin. This is a crazy part. Like just within Berlin, because of the 12 districts of each having their own understanding of things and each caseworker doing things differently, even something simple like that means that you cannot get a straight answer. So my job is more often than not to document the variance, like just the ballpark estimate of what can happen. A good example is if you deregister. So if you leave Germany, you get a certificate and you use that certificate to cancel your phone bill and do a bunch of other things. And they don't send it to foreign addresses. You're leaving the country and they won't send you a document, or they do, but they use standard post that shows up months later. And I asked if they can send it by email, and the answer is like no, but sometimes yes. And yeah, well, this is an answer in itself, saying like you may try that, you may not get what you want, and act accordingly. So like this is also useful information for readers, saying that it's unpredictable, so act accordingly. And yeah, all of that just kind of shows the importance of just asking around, because none of this is written down. I put a lot of information that just wasn't on the internet before. And I also average a lot of information that is there, but it's just lost in private Facebook groups and posts from 5 years ago. Yeah. So basically, I'm trying to do the opposite of every website ever by just skip a few slides there. Okay. Step 4 is writing and editing. Just spoil it. Yeah. So I write clearly and concisely in plain English. This is something I put a lot of work into. I can revise the same paragraph over and over for like an hour, and just to get the sentence right, so that it's very succinct. And yeah, I just figure people are super busy, they're super stressed, and if I can just save them the friction of understanding the text by giving them clear information, it will matter, right? Their attention is limited, and a lot of them don't speak English as their first language. They could be like the fourth or fifth language, and yeah, it's important to get the information clearly across to not leave any ambiguity. And I do get emails sometimes. Someone like asks me like, this thing you say, it could mean two different things, and they try to clarify because it means everything to them. Yeah, so my content is meant to be skimmed. I know that people are busy. They won't read the entire thing top to bottom in linear fashion. They just kind of jump around clicking the sections that seem like it has the answer that they need. And I try to use clear formatting to get people to where they want to be, to get them to the information they need. You can see it sometimes. I use this bottom line upfront method of journalism, where you start with the title and immediately the first word should be the answer, and then you just clarify. So can I do this thing? And if the first word is in bold, no. And then I explain why and where the exceptions apply and so on. And it just means that people, if they get the straight answer is enough for them, they don't have to keep hunting. And again, it just needs to be not that, meaning that you get straight to recipe on that website, which is something you don't get on the internet these days. I draw a lot of inspiration from nhs.uk. If you haven't seen this website before, you should check it out. It really is it really sets a high standard for other websites. It's a wonderfully straightforward and well-written website. As most governments, NHS.uk, yeah. And honestly, most UK government websites follow this sort of pattern. They have really strong and well applied writing standards that we don't tend to have. There is one for the city of Berlin, but I've never seen it in action. And yeah, if you go on their website, I really like the AHS because you can look up something that affects all of us and that stresses all of us. It's like, oh, I have this lump, should I be worried? And they're like, oh, if the lump is like that, don't worry. Start calling a doctor if the lump looks like that. And the visual design of the page matches it. Like if you could scroll down, you would see like the black one that says like, if it's like that, so talk to a doctor right now. And yeah, just the fact that they tell you at which point you need to start to worry is groundbreaking. I really love how they don't waste a single word on this page. It's truly beautiful. And you can see a lot of that writing slowly making its way into the writing on All About Berlin. One other important aspect of writing clearly is to avoid assuming prior knowledge, right? I just assume that my reader is someone who arrived in Germany yesterday, speaks absolutely no German, definitely doesn't know what a Wohnungsgeberbestätigung is, and generally doesn't have the energy to take care of that. That's why I explain everything that needs explaining. Nothing is too obvious, nothing gets skipped. And if the explanation gets too long, I just extract it to one of those glossary pop-ups, or just sometimes to its own separate guides. There are some situations where I have a list of documents, and a single document has its own guide on how to obtain it, because I went through the process of getting it, and it turns out it's not so easy, because you have to write a Formlose-Antrag, so you have to write a letter asking for it politely, and then they say, sure, transfer money to this bank account at this exact amount, and then 6 weeks later they send you the document. So there's no process to speak of. It's just a thing they sometimes do for people, and it varies again from district to district. So yeah, no explanation is unnecessary. Everything can be the one thing that cracks someone, that makes them give up, that makes them procrastinate. And I figure if I have all the information there, people are a lot more likely to make the right decisions. I use images sparingly, but I do end up creating a lot of my own images and my own graphics. I also create my own letter templates. So again, writing a letter is one of these super stressful things. And so I end up creating these things in 2 languages where people can fill the information. So they get a printable letter in the DIN 5008 format. So like it's German. And yeah, these get used thousands of times per month. So I assume that it's a lot of time being saved. And when this gets too complicated, when explanations and templates and these things still don't do it, I started making tools. This is a text calculator that I made about 2 years ago. I also made a tool that helps people find burger appointments because this is also a step that adds a lot of friction. It does not really reduce uncertainty, but it reduces friction, and I think that's just as important. Step 5 is the release. So All About Berlin is under source control on Git. So I can work on different things at the same time. So sometimes I'll have a branch about a thing that involves hundreds of changes, about like 5 new guides and affecting dozens of pages. And so I'd rather work on them separately so that they keep making the little changes on the main branch, typos and other things. And when something is ready, I just merge it. And then I have my release checklist, which is basically where to post on social media, where to mention it, which experts to involve. And it's each guide that gets its own list, but this is roughly the template that I start with. I also release the byproducts of my work, so I try to open source as much code as possible. And the website itself would be open source if I was not absolutely certain that like some illegal copies would spring up within a month. But I really like to open source the infrastructure. At the very least, the static site generator I've made is there, my Bergamt appointment finder, and the Reddit bot that is no longer active, and yeah, old code. And the last step, the most important one, is maintenance. Each guide I publish is more like a commitment, sort of liability. It's not something that I just publish and forget, because again, it's not the news, it's just enduring content. And I try to see it a bit like a tree where even though it develops new branches, the trunk and the branches just grow sturdier and thicker with time. And it's something very, very important to me. I've set up a lot of infrastructure to keep those guides up to date. Like these are some of the hundreds of pages that I monitor for changes. Those are mostly legal texts. So if the Öffentliches Gestalten changes, I get an email where I see exactly what changed. And then within a few hours, I can update the website. I also have these things that are like triggers that fail on certain dates. So it allows me to set a date of expiration on certain parts of the content. So it's a sort of reminder to check if a statement is still true after a while. And basically just makes the entire website fail to build if this doesn't get removed or updated. I also use lots of constants. Reminded to do for 2024. I just found this today. These are basically values that get fed into the website. Some of them are calculations that feed into other calculations, and it's basically a list that I go through at least once a year and just update everything. So if I update, for example, the minimum wage, it updates a bunch of other variables, which updates the calculator, and it just means that every on January 1st, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is just update these things, and the website is instantly up to date for usually another year. To make my research easier, I have this WhatsApp group of relocation consultants and immigration lawyers and all sorts of experts related to German bureaucracy. And we basically work it out together. We just exchange knowledge, share updates, and we just basically help each other. There are no invoices, nothing gets paid for. We just save each other a lot of time, and everyone benefits from this. And it's really nice for me when someone asks a question for a client. It's a super tough case, and like Fiona, one of the lawyers in the group, just gives like this really precise answer with us, like the link to the Öffentliches Gestalten that says exactly the solution to the problem. And like a week later, we get an update on how like that solved everything. So yeah, it's completely free, but boy, does it save us a lot of research, because we can also, these people go to the Ausländerbehörde with their clients all the time, so we can get an average of a lot more cases. They know the case workers on a first name basis. They say, oh, well, I have a meeting with that person today, wish me luck. And so we can really get an idea of how things work on the inside without getting any answer from the Ausländerbehörde. I also troll social media for answers, but this is getting a bit tedious for me. So I started making more and more tools to collect feedback. This is one that went live about a week ago, and it's got already 50 data points about people's residence permit applications. So it allows us to measure how long things take. And like 50 data points is basically a year's worth of Facebook posts. And we got it in a week or two. For me, it's a game changer, and now what I'm currently working on is data visualization for this, to give people a very simple, straightforward way of saying that this is about how long it takes to do this thing. This is how long it takes for someone in the E3 department, or an Indian citizen or a Turkish citizen, to get a residence permit at the moment. And this information is insanely valuable, because it varies from 1 month to 10 plus months. So people need to know, because their employers need to know. The way I see it, the goal is to get something like this, but for the immigration office. Right? To know when your residence permit is coming, so that you can tell your employer and you can start making plans, travel plans also, because you can leave the country because you no longer have this expired residence permit. And I just see it as a way to handle a journey with much higher stakes. The emphasis on maintenance is a radical idea, I feel, on an internet as mostly streams based, where everything is ephemeral and everything just kind of floats past. Someone posts a question, asks a question on Facebook, someone answers, and it's just gone from everyone's feed in a week. And a week later, someone asks the exact same question. And it means that it's really hard to invest time in people's questions, because someone's going to ask. And it feels like a waste of time. And I thought it would make a lot more sense to put everything in one place and just grow it over time. The way I see it, my website is a sort of a digital garden. It's something that grows in the same place, that remains. And I spend most of my days tending to it the same way I would a garden, walking around and plucking dead links and, pruning words that don't work and repotting the overgrown paragraphs in their own guides and articles. And the content just doesn't just flow past and disappear into the depths of the internet anymore. It just stays, and it grows, and it persists and bears fruit, and people benefit from it. And that means a lot to me. Above all, I feel like little by little, by doing this sort of gardening and landscaping, I'm starting to see the landscape itself change. And that's super important to me. Thank you.